Welcome back to the Former Fat Friend podcast. Today's episode is a really special one. I have traveled all the way to Florida to interview this next guest. She happens to also be one of my favorite people in the entire world. It's my mom, Linda. Mm-hmm. Welcome to the podcast, Mom.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Kasey. I'm honored to be here.
Wonderful. So if you follow me on social media, you might have heard me talk a little bit about my mom's own weight loss journey, but she has been on a GLP1 medication for just about 2 years. She's lost an incredible 90 pounds, and so she's had her own experience with that. So we're going to talk a bit about that tonight. She's also watched me go through bariatric surgery after struggling with my weight for most of my life. So I want to get her perspective on, what that was like as a mom to a daughter who was struggling with weight, what it was like to see me make the decision to have bariatric surgery and go through that process. And she was lucky enough to help me recover from my skin removal surgery a couple of years ago. So we're going to get her perspective from a caretaker on what that process is like, because that's such a common experience for people who lose a lot of weight. And so I'm excited to have you here.
All right. Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
So Mom, I know from growing up that you have struggled with your weight throughout your adult life. I can remember going with you to Jenny Craig, going with you to Weight Watchers meetings. Can you give us a little bit of background of your history with weight and weight loss and dieting?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's just something I've struggled with my entire life. I remember being 10 years old. What is that, 5th grade? And way back then, we had the President's Fitness Council where the kids would get weighed, and we'd go on a special program every year. Well, I remember doing to step on the scale, and I was so embarrassed because I was one of the bigger kids. And that it started like way back then, which probably wasn't a good thing, but just up and down my entire life. And you're right, you've seen me go through, the many different programs. I've done everything from Weight Watchers to Fen and little White Cross speed pills and everything.
Prescribed by a doctor, to clarify. She didn't buy it on the street.
to go after, some of it all. But yeah, and I remember one time specifically, I went to Weight Watchers for probably my 10th time, and I went to sign in, and the lady's like, wow, which what's your password? Which one do you want to go with? I'd been there so many times. Yeah. So the up and down has been the story of my life, up and down and trying everything under the sun.
And you've had pretty successful weight loss journeys in the past where you have lost a lot of weight. It seems like from my perspective, it's always been more of the maintaining that's been a little bit harder.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can lose weight, but keeping it off is the hardest thing. And so I've been up and down more times, and there are times I'd go places and I'd think, now, was I fat when I last saw this person, or was I skinny? It's like I didn't know what their reaction would be, right? So
yeah, and that's got to be hard kind of from like a mental and emotional standpoint to go through those constant ups and downs.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and sometimes I wouldn't want to go places, especially we live in Florida. There's bathing suits, beaches, shorts, and there were times I just didn't want to go because I had gained the weight back since I knew I'd seen those people, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to go. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you had to kind of look back on those times where you had lost a lot of weight and then gained it back, what do you think what made it so hard to sustain? Was it that it wasn't a sustainable way of weight loss in the first place, and it was just hard to keep doing that?
Sure. Well, when you're taking pills that really reduce your appetite, it's when you go off of them, your appetite simply returns. And so, and being social and, going out to dinner, and I just always love to eat. And so it would always come back on. I don't even think I maintained it for a year after most of them. It was several months after I finished. I got to the weight I wanted, and it slowly started creeping back up. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you ever have any doctors talk to you about weight loss?
Well, sure. When I was a kid, my mother took me to the doctor because I started to gain weight. And I remember him telling me I should be probably about 130 pounds. And I don't know what I weighed at the time, but that I was just a big boned girl and I was never going to be small. So maybe that was back in the back of my brain too. I would struggle like, am I really ever going to be skinny? Can I keep it there? And so that's the only time I can really remember anybody saying anything about it.
Yeah. Do you remember, like, throughout your life, what was like your highest weight that you ever saw?
Oh gosh, the highest I was about 238, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty high up there.
And so obviously now you know about bariatric surgery because I had it, but before I had surgery, did you know anything about weight loss surgery? Did you know anyone who had had it? Had you ever considered something like that as an option?
I had not, because I'm kind of a coward of these treatments anyway. I'm not much for pain, and I thought, we had a couple family members who had done it, and they were not successful long term with it. So
yeah, I actually remember. So the family members that we had were much larger. I think a lot of what I talk about is how I had this perception that bariatric surgery was for people who were like, 500-600 pounds. And it wasn't until I saw someone on TikTok who looked like me that had weight loss surgery that it was like a light bulb went off. And I said, oh, wait, maybe this is for me. So I had the same experience of watching our family members go through. But I actually remember my uncle who had gastric bypass surgery, and we saw him at Thanksgiving. It was maybe 5 months later, right? It was a couple of months, and he ate like an entire Subway foot-long sub, which even at the time, knowing what little I knew about bariatric surgery, was sort of like, that's odd. Now, in hindsight, that blows my mind because I am 3 years out. I couldn't eat a foot-long sub now. I have no idea how he managed to do that, but that is to say, I think my aunt was quite successful.
Yeah.
She just has, she's many, many years out and has had ups and downs in those many years, but initially was quite successful. But I don't think my uncle was following the rules necessarily.
Yeah. She does follow the rules, but she did gain a little bit of it back. So, but I remember taking her shopping after her surgery, and we just had a great time buying, things. You feel good in your clothes, and so that part was positive for me, but just something I never considered. I just thought it wasn't for me. I don't know why.
Yeah. And I think, obviously things like GLP1s, which I want to get to in a second, weren't available until recently. But I also think a lot of physicians are just not as educated on the treatment of obesity as they need to be. And I wonder if someone, 10 years ago would have said to you, hey, this is clearly a chronic disease. You've struggled with this for your whole life. Here's an option of weight loss surgery. Would you have taken it? Would you have considered it if anybody had said?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. But nobody did. I mean, and I'm thinking of other doctors that I had talked with, but bringing back memory here, that they always encouraged me to go on a diet. It was never, there was never any other option. They didn't encourage, the diet doctors did, but your regular doctor just encouraged you to go on a diet. A Mediterranean diet was the one that I've been heard of recently. That's the one you should go on. That was after the low-fat one was popular and wasn't working. So, no one ever encouraged me to do it, and I just honestly thought it was not for me.
Yeah. I can remember when I had my pre-diabetes diagnosis, the doctor sent a message in this portal and was like, you have pre-diabetes, and here's what I think you should do. Focus on eating a low-calorie diet. Things like carbs are not always great for you. And it was like, I know.
We know that stuff.
I've spent 30 years trying to eat this way. If I could do it, I would. And even when I said, I went back and I said, hey, I would like to explore bariatric surgery. Can I have a referral? Because I was with an HMO at the time. He said, I don't think this is right for you, but if you really want one, I'll give you one. I just think doctors really aren't as educated as they should be. And I do think I have a lot of thoughts on like the public discourse around things like Ozempic and Wegovy. Obviously, it's been talked about in social circles more than any other treatment for obesity ever has. But I hope a positive that comes out of it is that doctors get a little bit more educated on treating these things, and that they don't give that same, just diet and exercise, eat less, move more, that they really start to recognize that obesity is something that requires medical treatment. Because, I think about someone like you, that if you had that intervention years ago, I think things, you wouldn't have had to struggle for so many years.
I absolutely agree. I wish this was something. I mean, back then they didn't know about it, but I had a lot of doctors push the pills on me, though, I will say, back in the day, but we just didn't know about what the options were for today. And now my doctor, when it really was your encouragement to go on it, And I thought, and my first reaction was, I've tried everything under the sun. I was at my top weight at that point, and again, and I thought, I don't even think I can do this again. And you're like, just give it a try. And so, fortunately for me, fortunately or unfortunately, but my A1C at my last doctor's appointment 2 years ago was right at the borderline of being like, if I'd been 1 point over, I'd be pre-diabetic. So I probably could have qualified, which is what you had told me and also her. So my doctor said, sure, give it a try. And if it hadn't been your encouragement with it, I would not have done it, or just the publicity of it recently.
Yeah.
And it's been one of the things that has truly worked for me.
Yeah. And you're on Trulicity, which is one of the earlier generation GLP1s, and in studies doesn't do as well as some of these other things like Ozempic and Mounjaro, but you've done incredibly well on it.
It just works for me. So I haven't gone off of it. I don't even know if Ozempic and Mounjaro are available right now, but at the time they weren't. Ozempic was back ordered, and the only thing I could take was Trulicity. So I thought, I'll try it. And at this point, I don't really have a reason to change. Trulicity's working. I can get it. It's covered in my Medicare Advantage program because of the blood work. So I kind of just I probably will stick with that.
So we talked about how in the past you were successful with weight loss but struggled to maintain it. This time you've been maintaining this for about a year.
It was right. It took me about a year to lose that weight, and then it was the end of December 2 years ago. That's right. So I've been maintaining it.
If you had to describe the difference being on a GLP-1 versus every other diet and weight loss attempt, how would you explain that to someone?
It just works. I mean, I'm sure there's a better explanation, but, with diet pills, of course, I just felt like for the first time, I'm finally on something that isn't bad for my body. You're taking medicines, and even one of your recent podcasts, she talked about metformin being given along with the pill, and I had a doctor that prescribed that as well for me, and I was like, I couldn't see the difference, and I stopped taking it. But this is the one that I feel like, okay, I'm doing something good for my body. I'm lowering my A1C. I'm not going to be a diabetic, and I'm losing the weight. So, I think it's been a real breakthrough, and I do wish more people knew about it. And I don't know if doctors are encouraging it out there or not. And, there's lots of controversy over, are you taking it from people who need it, which is ridiculous, of course. And doctors just need to be educated, I think, on this too, all of them, and see the results, because for me, it really has been a blessing, and it's just worked very well.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's changed your relationship with food?
Yeah. I mean, I remember thinking at one point, I guess this is what it's like to not be a fat person, like I don't crave food. I enjoy it. And I always try to eat healthy, but, I still have the occasional sweets and things that I like, but I don't overeat, and it's not willpower. It just happens, I think my stomach's full. And I've not had gastric bypass surgery. So this is just with the treatment itself, or the, Trulicity.
Yeah.
So I don't think about food all the time. And sometimes I'm not hungry. I'm like, oh, it is time to eat lunch. Not, oh my gosh, I'm starving. What am I going to eat?
I think that's such a common experience that people who are on GLP-1s or have had weight loss surgery experience, which is like, it's like this light bulb moment where you're like, oh, if this is how skinny people feel all the time, no wonder they're skinny.
That's right. Food's not always on their mind, right?
Yeah. And it's really hard to convey that to someone who has never struggled with their weight, who I think everything's relative, right? So you only know your own experience, but someone who's never struggled with their weight, I see all these like coaches on Instagram that are kind of anti-weight loss surgery, anti-Ozempic. And they're like, well, if I can do it, you can do it. I work hard every day. I eat healthy every day. And it's like, I appreciate that you put thought into your diet and you put thought into your workout plan. But unless you've experienced what that's like to be thinking about food in the way that an obese person does, and it's like an uncontrollable thing. Like you don't have any control over the way your brain operates around food. You really don't know what that's like. And I think it's this unique perspective of someone when you've been obese and then you take these medications or you have weight loss surgery, being able to see both sides of the spectrum. It's like, oh yeah, like unless you have been through this, you don't truly understand.
I think that's true of so many things. Unless you've been there, you really can't have the empathy and the understanding that it takes, as hard as you try. So I look at people that are overweight. There's a lot of overweight people out there, and I think I was one of them. And yeah, we need to make it more public knowledge that like it's okay to do this. We're not doing anything wrong by doing this. We're just getting our health and our weight back, where it should be and in control.
So when you think about what life has been like after losing 90 pounds, what are some of the biggest improvements you've seen?
Well, I'm more active. I really kind of enjoy. We got signed up with a personal trainer. It was a gift from our other daughter, and we enjoyed working out. I feel better. I'm eating healthier, just because I want to, I guess, and going more places and just being more active, I think, has been the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. Have you experienced any challenges, side effects, downsides on this journey?
When I first started, I had a little bit of like my stomach felt a little weird at first, and I thought, oh boy, what is that? But for the most part, I have not had any difficulties with the Trulicity at all. And I don't know about the other ones, but that's been fine for me. Good. I better not talk too much about Trulicity. Everybody will sign up and I won't be able to get it.
Yeah, well, and I will say with the disclaimer that if you're interested in a GLP-1, the data is very clear that the early generation ones are not as effective as the newer ones. So I wouldn't recommend Trulicity. It just happened to be what you could get. It happened to be what your insurance covered. And it's worked great for you, but there are better options available.
Yeah, and I might switch at some point if Trulicity becomes unavailable or for whatever reason stops working. But at this point, it's working just fine. So,
do you think this is something you'll be on long term, and are you okay with that?
Probably. I mean, it's not harming my body in any way. It's actually helping it. I don't take it every week now. I try to do it like every other week, every 3 weeks, just depending. But probably more like every other week, and it just... it's still working okay for me, so I will probably stay with it.
Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about me.
Okay.
I actually want to talk about family dynamics. So obviously, I grew up struggling with my weight. I can remember being, in third grade and kids teasing me about my weight. But I also have...
That's terrible.
I have an older sister. She's 17 months older than me, and she has never struggled with her weight. In fact, she's always been very, very thin, very active, very athletic. What was that like for you as a mom, having two daughters who had very different body types, very different relationships with weight and food?
Boy, that's hard to address. I mean, I tried never to make anybody feel bad about. I mean, I don't remember you being overweight in third grade. I really don't. But as a kid myself, I was. So I can relate to that. And I guess I just never tried to make any differences. There was no differential between the two of you. I mean, you had different lifestyles, different friends and things. But I didn't address it, mainly because I didn't, even if I noticed it, which I can't remember noticing it that early, I wouldn't have said anything. I mean, just because I personally was struggling with my weight, so I'm not an expert at how to help you. You're watching me go up and down over the years, and I just never wanted you to feel bad about it. We just loved you for who you were, both of you, and it didn't really matter to us, other than it obviously was affecting you. So yeah, but that's about it.
I can remember going to Weight Watchers with you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Do you remember, from your perspective, was that at my urging, or was that something that you wanted for me?
I can't remember, honestly. I just, I was on so many diets over the years, and so I really didn't want to inflict that upon you. And I guess I never wanted you to feel like your weight was an issue. I mean, some people are just larger built. That is true. You don't have to be the skinniest person around, and you have to feel good about who you are wherever you are in life. So having that different dynamic in the two, I saw you struggling a little bit, but I didn't really want to address it to make you feel worse about it. If I'm saying, Kasey, maybe you should come to Weight Watchers with me. So I think maybe that was more your wanting to do it. So whether that was the wrong approach or not, seems to have worked out well in the end here. So
yeah. So obviously, I think I struggled with my weight most of my life, especially in college and post-college. Started to really gain a lot of weight in grad school. When I had bariatric surgery, I didn't tell you or anyone in my family. I spent about a year going through the process with my insurance, didn't tell anyone I was doing it, and then ultimately paid out of pocket and did it on my own. And I told you, I drive down to Florida every year for Christmas, which is why I'm here. I drive with the dogs, and I had surgery in November, and I didn't feel totally comfortable driving by myself that year. So I had asked my mom to come fly up to DC to drive down with me. And I don't remember why I told you I wanted you to come up, but you didn't really question it. You just said, okay,
sure.
I'll be there.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then I told you then, so I was about a month post-op.
Okay.
What do you remember, like showing up to DC? I think I had lost about 30 pounds at that point. Do you remember what you thought when you first saw me and when I told you that I had bariatric surgery?
I was probably shocked. Like, why didn't you tell us? We could have been there for you. I think, did you think we wouldn't approve of it? So, or you just weren't comfortable yourself telling us? We would have been there for you, of course, and I think you know that, but it's something you felt you needed to do on your own. And so, yeah, I was a little horrified at the moment. Like, oh my gosh. I felt bad that you went through it on your own. We wished we could have been there for you.
Yeah. Did you notice that I had lost weight?
Yeah, of course. 30 pounds makes a difference.
Were you worried? Were you like wondering what I was doing?
No, I guess I didn't see. I just never really addressed your weight. It wasn't like I didn't look at you and say, oh, she's overweight or she's skinny. I just, saw you for you. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that was it didn't jump out at me as being, yeah, you lost a little weight, you look great, but I didn't maybe make a big deal about it because it just was never a big deal to me.
Yeah. I think I didn't tell you guys for a couple reasons. One, when I was starting the process, I wanted it to be my decision, and I didn't want people to say, oh, you don't need to do that. You're not that big. Because no one really understands the struggle that someone's going through, because you keep a lot of that to yourself. I think weight has so much shame around it that it's a struggle we don't tend to share with people. And so you try to put on a good face and you try to, make it seem like you're doing okay, even when you're really not. And I knew that if I told people out of love, I would have gotten the reaction of like, I think you're fine.
We love you
like
just the way you are.
You don't need to change. So I wanted it to be my decision. Then I didn't tell you because I went to Mexico.
Oh gosh. You remember Dad's like, he was quite surprised too.
When did you learn that I went to Mexico? Because I did not tell you that right away either.
I really don't remember, but I think it was over a phone call because obviously we lived in different states. And then I mentioned it to Dad, and he was like, what? Does she know how dangerous that is? Yeah, so our first reaction was danger. Like, oh my gosh, why would you even think of doing that and not telling us?
I actually think you learned on a podcast episode.
Is that where I don't remember.
It was when I was sharing my story, so like our third episode, and I remember getting a text from Erin, my sister, that said in bold capital letters, Mexico? Question mark, exclamation mark.
That sounds like Erin.
Yeah, she was pretty horrified too.
We were all horrified. There's no other way you can explain that.
Yeah. I will say, obviously everything worked out for me. In hindsight, I wish I would have told you guys because it would have been nice to have somebody there to help me. Just, even like carrying my suitcase through the airport on the way home.
Just to make sure you made it back alive would have been helpful to have somebody there.
I do my research, and
you are a researcher, so yes,
I felt pretty confident in the safety of that decision. And it's not like if I could have afforded to do it close to home, I would have. But it was $32,000 to pay out of pocket in the DC area, and I paid about $8,000 in Mexico. And even that at the time was a stretch for me because I got my PhD and I didn't finish like doing my postdoc until I was like, much older. So I didn't have as much money saved as someone my age might otherwise have had. Sure. So yeah, $30,000 was just completely out of reach for me, but $8,000 was like, I think I can like maybe make this work. Yeah. And so it was a great option for me. If I could have done it closer, I would have. And I have since learned in talking about this on social media that there are a lot of doctors in the U.S. who are recognizing the gap in insurance care. And so they're offering much lower cost out-of-pocket surgeries for patients, usually around $10,000, which is still a lot of money. But had that been an option at the time, I probably would have stayed in the U.S.
Yeah, so that's something you could handle. Yeah, that's a little scary to go out of the country. To especially to Mexico. Yeah, wouldn't recommend it, but for you, thankfully, it did work out. And hopefully, insurance companies will start to realize this too, that they can cover it, and doctors will start looking at it differently. So,
yeah. So we don't live in the same state, so you didn't get to see me every day. But what was it like watching me go through the weight loss phase? I think I saw you, a couple times that year. Did it seem like I was losing weight really fast? Were my eating habits very strange? What do you remember about that?
You were obviously eating smaller amounts of food, but again, I don't think that I don't see you that much, so I didn't see you every day. But when you came to visit, you just seemed pretty normal. You were losing weight, seemed to be happier, doing more. Well, you've always been active, though, Kasey. So that's one of the things, in spite of you being overweight, and it never held you back from doing things, from making friends, from being active, but it may have kept you from things I didn't realize or know at the time. But you just seemed great. You looked great. You did become even more active, I think, and so that part was good for you, good for all of us, really, and we got to see more of you. So
yeah, I think you're right. I always have been active, but I think a lot of that stuff was harder for me. Like even things, I played volleyball.
Yeah.
I still play volleyball, but I play volleyball a ton. And I can remember in the summers, never wanting to wear shorts to go play beach volleyball because it was embarrassing to wear shorts when I felt like I didn't look that good, but it was so hot. And I think those are the kinds of little things that to anyone looking from the outside in, they're like, oh yeah, there's this girl. She's out every Sunday playing volleyball with her friends. She's halfway decent at it and looks like she's having a good time. But what you don't see is the uncomfortableness of I'm hot and sweating, or I'm wearing shorts and my legs are rubbing together and they're chafing because it's so hot and sweaty and uncomfortable. And so even though I was active, I think I'm able to do things so much easier now. Like I can do
That's
things
true.
without
Exactly.
a lot of, it's just easier.
Yes, I've sort of forgotten about that. Your legs, I would have to wear something under, like a skirt or whatever, those longer legs, so your legs don't rub together. And
oh gosh, yeah. I spent a small fortune trying every product under the sun of anti-chafing or shorts or those thigh bands that you could put up around your thighs. So many things just to try to be comfortable.
That's right.
You don't have to think about now.
Now you're much more comfortable in your skin, and I am too. I imagine at some point we'll get to the plastic surgery side of this, but it's just for me, I don't have, my skin is not as firm, so, but I was in the same boat. But right now I still am, I can't really wear the super short shorts and tank tops without, I have a lot of excess skin on my arms.
Yeah, so obviously with major weight loss comes loose skin. It is unavoidable. I just think everyone is going to have it if you lose enough weight.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I was lucky enough to be able to have skin removal surgery. I had a tummy tuck, a breast lift, breast augmentation, and you and Dad came up to DC to help me recover from that. What did you think when I told you that I was going to do this? What were your thoughts about that? And then what was that recovery like?
Well, the recovery, I don't know if I should start there. The thoughts were you had lost all that weight, and you were seeming happier, and I thought if it's going to make you happier and more active. So I wasn't opposed to it at all. I mean, I just was worried. I mean, surgery in general is kind of dangerous. So, but it was something you wanted to do. So of course we supported you. But the recovery, I'm not ever going to be a nurse. It was never in my calling. I remember when you girls were young, I couldn't even, you would fall down and hurt your knee. And I remember one time I'm trying to clean it off and you're going, it's okay, Mom, it'll be okay. You and Aaron. And I was like, so I'm not a nurse. And so that was challenging. And then we had a schedule of pills, and thank goodness Dad was there to help with that. But it was, it was a little bit intense, the recovery for me, probably as much as it was for you, because I'm not comfortable with that. But it just, having watched you go through it, if I were younger and were doing this, I would absolutely do it. I mean, it's, you go through a little bit of pain or maybe a lot of pain, but the end result is very nice and it's the one you want. And so you can then begin doing some of the things or wearing some of the things that you may never have worn before. And so, where I'm dealing with a lot of loose skin right now, but I'm also I'm not sure I would do major plastic surgery at this point.
Yeah. What was the worst part of the recovery, do you think?
just watching you be in pain, or maybe having to empty that blood thing along your stomach there, that little tube. It's like, oh my gosh, and making sure I was just worried I was going to make a mistake because nursing and taking care of all of that was never in my scope of things I felt comfortable or wanted to do. And I just got very nervous I would make a mistake. So we had a whole schedule of pills that you could have every so hours, and that was okay. But it was just the dressings and all that had to be changed that I was a little squeamish about.
Yeah, so. I also came home with a catheter, so you had to empty that catheter for about a day.
I know.
Oh, that was bad. And then the drains, I think I had a drain for about 5 days until that first appointment.
If I had any doubt, nursing or helping, I just could never do it.
Well, you did a great job.
Yeah, you survived. You're here, so I guess we did okay.
Yeah.
So.
No, and you're right. I think we were actually shopping the other day, and we were in a swimsuit store, and I pointed out a bikini, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cute." And you said something like, "Oh, it's so nice that you're able to wear stuff like that now." That's right. And you start to forget, I think, as time goes on, when you're past all these things, like. Now, when I think about buying a bathing suit, of course, I think about I'll buy anything. I like one pieces, I like two pieces. But there was a time where I would have never worn a two piece. And there was a time after losing 100 pounds, I would have still never worn a two piece because I was uncomfortable with the way my loose skin looked. So it is really nice to be able to, it's not about, at least in my opinion, it's not about trying to look perfect. I'm never going to look like a supermodel, and I don't need to. It's really just about feeling comfortable in your own skin and having like the options to wear what you want and wear cute bikinis and feel good in them.
Yeah. Well, I've been there many times in my life, up and down. So, I know that very well. And so thankfully, this is hopefully the last time I'll need to be on any kind of a diet. I don't really follow a diet. You're much of a very good inspiration with the protein and helping me I watch your videos and get lots of, I love your stuffed peppers. Had those just the other day. And
so I've gotten you on our, the protein coffee in the morning.
Love it. Yes.
I also made you stuffed peppers this week. So
yep. I love that too. I like the chocolate coffee or whatever it's called, but it's one of my favorites now. And we even have Dad eating that too. So we're drinking it in the morning.
It's good with the Fairlife milk to get a little extra protein.
That's right. So just more conscious of eating healthier. And of course, your sister Erin is very much into athletics as well. So she's always encouraging us to exercise. And
she's very fit. She's like the strongest, fittest person I know.
Yeah.
And she's kind of always been that way.
Yeah. But you're right behind her there, Kasey. I'm not sure you're behind her. I think you're about equal. And so just encouraging us. We have a lot of encouragement. So for keeping my weight where it needs to be, it's not really a struggle. I actually don't really think about it. So I just eat when I'm hungry, and I've really maintained this for a year, and that's like the longest I've ever done that. It takes you a year to get where you want to get to, and then within a couple of months, it just always piled back on. So I just hope that more people realize this is an option and talk to their doctors about it, and hopefully it will be covered by more and more insurance, not just for Medicare people who are, or for people who are at risk of diabetes.
So obviously GLP-1 medications are pretty life-changing, but they are just a tool. Weight loss happens because you eat healthier, you eat fewer calories than you burn. What are some of the habits you think have helped you lose the weight and also helped you maintain it for the last year?
Well, just eating more protein, of course. And I find that sometimes, just like I have in the past, you will tend to gravitate a little bit towards your, I love red licorice, right? So it's not that I can't have it, but if I deviate too far off, it's just a reminder to me, my body's like, I don't like it. I don't feel the best. That's part of it. And I just have to start adding more protein to it. So that's been the biggest thing. And I just really don't think about food all the time. I try to just eat healthy, but I don't focus on it, I guess, where before it was always so focused, like, okay, what can I have for lunch? What can I have for dinner? Can I make it to the next meal without being starving? Yeah. It's just, I guess I feel like I'm a normal person who has never had a weight problem.
Yeah, I think that's that food noise that people talk about, where it's like this almost obsessive thinking about food all the time. And it's like, if you're on a diet, you're constantly thinking like, what can I have? What can't I have? How, and how can I I remember being on Weight Watchers and trying to maximize my 0 point things. What can I have for 0 points and how can it fill me up? And now I think you and I both probably eat very similarly where you have your red licorice, but you don't have the entire bag in one night. You have a piece and then you're fine. Right. And it's just much more of a kind of even keel when it comes to food, where you don't have those same kind of spikes up and down of gorging yourself on food or overly restricting yourself either. It's just
like something you don't think about. I mean, there's no way to really describe it except that I don't really think about it. I don't crave food. Actually, sometimes it's dinner time and I'm like, I really don't even feel like cooking dinner. I don't even feel like it's just I eat many times because it's mealtime, right? And I know I need to eat to be healthy. So it's been much easier this time around for sure.
Yeah. I think there's also I think you can still enjoy food when you have weight loss surgery, when you're on these medications. It's just not that every single meal has to be the best thing you've ever had. Sometimes you do just need to eat because you're it's lunchtime, I'm busy, I need protein,
That's right.
I need some veggies. And so you eat because you have to, but then you still have those moments where you go to an incredible restaurant and you enjoy food. I remember going to Bill and I went to a Michelin star restaurant that was a 26 course sushi restaurant.
Wow.
That was amazing. I enjoyed every bit of that meal, even if I couldn't eat the full 26 courses. I don't need to feel like that every single time I eat. And it almost makes those moments better.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There's so many times I would overeat. And, growing up as a kid, meat and potatoes every night, that was like a meat, potato, vegetable every single night. And we had tons of food. My dad was a baker. So, we always had the pastries in the house and the breads and all of those things. And food was just a major... food gatherings happen around food, but now it's more the gathering that I guess I'm more interested in than the food. We went to something last night at my sister-in-law's house, Kasey's aunt, and she had it was, 2 kinds of lasagna and a great salad, but I didn't gorge on it. I just enjoyed it, just to the satisfaction level, I don't feel the need to eat 3 pieces because it's so good. It's just satisfying with that one. And she made cookies and a birthday cake, and we had all of that as well, but not to the excess that I would have done it before. So I think that's been one of the things that's changed effortlessly, kind of. It just happens.
I think that's a good point, that it's those types of events you can appreciate for the event itself. Or even we went to a wedding, my cousin's wedding, and I didn't even think about the food. I had forgotten if we had said what food we wanted, and it was good food, but that wasn't the point of the event. The point was being with people that you love and dancing and the music, and you get to kind of enjoy those moments a little bit more when you're not so focused on the food.
Yeah, it just takes your focus off it, I guess. And little by little, you just get healthier, stronger, and kind of don't want to go back, which I don't think I will. So
that's great.
It's been a year, longest time I've ever done that for weight loss. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So it's really all your urging that's done it. The scary part of hearing about your surgery and all of that. But I would certainly encourage people, if you're young and don't wait till you're my age to get it right.
Yeah. Do you wish you would have done something sooner?
Oh, of course. Yeah, sure. I could have saved myself all the ups and downs, the thousands of dollars in clothes and now they're the wrong size. And the funniest thing is, the job that I had was at a clothing store, a little part-time job. And I had bought lots of clothing because I get a great discount at it. And so then I gained weight and my clothes didn't fit me. So this was a couple of years ago, I saved them all. And with the GLP medicine that I'm on, I surpassed that weight. I'm now lower than it. Now all of those clothes were too big and I had to give them away.
Yeah.
So it's that was kind of a nice thing to do, but I really liked some of those clothes.
Yeah. So. It is interesting how I think when you're in the kind of the thick of struggling with weight, you have this idea of if I could just get to this weight, I would be happy. And for me, it was always under 200 pounds. If I could just get under 200 pounds, I would be happy. And the idea that I could ever be 128 pounds was no, there's there's no world where that could be a possibility. And I think that's probably the same for you, where
absolutely.
Those clothes were almost like a pipe dream
and
that you were holding on to. And then to think that they would be too big is
it's
hard to
wild.
even imagine.
Well, when we talked about it, I was thinking, you're like, well, what weight do you want to get to? And I thought, well, if I could even be like 175 pounds, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
Because that would probably put me at like a 14 maybe. I don't know. I hadn't really thought about the size that much, but I thought that would be a great weight. Well, then without trying at all, I got down and I pretty much hover between the high 130s, 140, sometimes 141, but I try to just stay right around that range. And so that to me was shocking that I would actually drop below like the 175, 180 mark. And I would have been happy at that. But I have the joy of buying new clothing. So.
Yeah. And did you feel like your body just sort of stopped when it wanted to with the weight loss?
Absolutely. That's another thing. It's a good point that you brought out. It's like I didn't try to get down to 140 or, the high 130s. It just happened. And I thought I was done, at the higher weight of 175 or 80.
Yeah.
So that 5 pound range is sort of where I stay between right now. Without trying. And so that additional was at 40 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without really trying. And that didn't happen overnight, but just over a couple of months, just doing what I normally do with them, being on the medication, it just happened. So yeah, I would definitely encourage someone to do it, and do it when you're younger so you don't end up with that flabby skin and you might not need plastic surgery.
But also, if you're older, it's not too late.
No, obviously it isn't. No.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I agree. I would encourage anybody to do it, but certainly I look around and I see a lot of people that are overweight, and I was certainly one of them. And you know the anguish, the things that they go through, the same things that we've gone through, just like anybody else, And so my encouragement all along was like I never wanted you or anybody to feel uncomfortable because of their size, because you can be beautiful whether you're big or whether you're small, but if it affects your personality and the things that you do, then it's time to make a change.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot with the body positivity movement, and I think there's so many good things to come from that, because you're right, you deserve to feel good wherever you are, whether you're overweight, underweight, normal weight, it doesn't matter. You should feel good. I just don't think I could ever do that. I never felt good at a bigger weight.
That's right. I didn't either. So
yeah, and I think it's okay to say, like, I think that wanting to change your weight is not at odds with wanting to feel good about yourself.
Right.
I think those things often get conflated, that it's like, if you want to lose weight, you must think that like all obese people need to lose weight. And really that's not true. I think there should be room for all of that.
There should be. And if it bothers you, then you need to take care of it. But I think, so we have had a little movement change. I think, people are more accepting of, if you're a little bit bigger, but if you feel bad about it, you're right. And for me, I didn't like being up and down so much. So being able to maintain it, and I wanted to be smaller. I wasn't always this big. Or I sometimes even forget that I'm not this big anymore. So I still forget. Or I'll catch a glimpse in the mirror. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is that really me? Yeah, I kind of forget.
It takes your brain a while to catch up.
Yeah. I mean, when you're like in the 230, for me, that was quite a bit larger.
Now, when people see you and they ask you how you've lost weight, are you open with sharing?
I wasn't initially, but yes, I am, because I've watched your you sharing with everybody, and I feel like it's a help, if it's for somebody. I had one of the girls I know from church ask me, she said, my mom, wants to know, my mom's trying to lose weight. What did you do? So I told her. So now I do tell people. And I thought, if it helps somebody, yes. And if it's for them, great. If it isn't, then that's okay too.
Yeah.
But I did have one person who saw me after I hadn't seen her in months and months, and a sweet lady. And she came by. I was greeting at our church, saying hi to people. And she said, what happened? Are you okay?
Oh, gosh. She thought like you were sick.
She
or
thought
something?
I was sick, and she, I don't know, so she was a little confused. I said, no, I meant to do this.
Yeah.
So that was the sort of an odd time. I'm like, no, I meant to do it. And people usually ask, oh, you look great. What'd you do? So I will share, because I think it is important.
Yeah.
To not say, well, and before I couldn't share. No, I went on diet pills and I ran around speedy all the time, and that wasn't comfortable.
Yeah. That felt,
Yeah, it felt wrong to, like, I wasn't going to say I'm kind of taking drugs to do this. And so what would be considered a drug, right?
Right.
Even though I got them from a doctor, not off the street.
Well, because I think there's like that shame
Yeah,
associated
shame.
with
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
And that's
Exactly. Like I couldn't do it myself, right? I needed help. But, there's nothing wrong with needing help. And I think
Yeah.
our society is open to that. People need help
Yeah.
for all kinds of things. And it's okay to put it out there.
So you mentioned about my sharing on social media. How do you feel about that I put so much of my life out there?
I don't know if I'd share so many pictures personally, but I think it's okay because I really think you have the right heart about it, the right reason. You're not showing off. You're not like some of these things we see. People are dressed wildly, and I'm thinking this is pretty crazy. I wouldn't share that. But the things that you're sharing are things that people who are in my state at one point that like I've struggled my whole life. I can't get this weight off, and if she could look like that. I don't know if you want to share last night's story, but if she could share like that and lose the weight, you're doing it you're helping someone, and so if you look at it that way, you're not showing off.
Well, yeah. So I think you're right, and you've actually directed a few people in your life to go follow me because they're in a similar boat, and I think that's great. But I actually think so. We were at my aunt's house last night, and my other aunt and uncle were there, and they didn't know about my social media presence.
Yeah,
and so
I thought, I hope I was supposed to say that.
It's okay.
So, yeah.
And so they were looking at it, and my aunt looked at this video, and she's like, "Now that's another girl. That's not you." About my before photo.
Yeah, that's
I was
right.
like, "Of course it's me. Why would I?"
You never look like that. Was what someone said. Yeah, I think
and so
Rob
I think
said that.
We were talking about how it's so funny how when you're close to someone, you don't always see them for what they really are. But I will say, part of the reason I post pictures with, in my underwear of those befores is because I was really good at dressing myself. And I don't think you can tell how big I actually was in clothing because I dressed really, really well. And I dressed in a way that flattered my body type. And that's probably why people, like my aunt says, "Oh, that's not you."
That can't be you. That's right.
I put so much effort into trying to make my body look better and smaller. And so sometimes those underwear photos are the only way you can fully grasp just how far I've come.
They really are you in those pictures.
They really, I promise.
Really are.
They're always me. I'm not stealing
That's
anyone
right.
else's photos.
No, they're truly Kasey. But right, you've always had a nice flair for dressing right and putting things together, and even in your home decorating, it's just you have that little gift and that flair. So I call Kasey when I want to know, like, does this look good together? They're my fashion consultants. I tell everybody.
Well, thank you.
Both of you.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I feel like we've talked about so many interesting things, and you've had such a great journey, and I think it's inspiring for people to see someone, especially someone older. You're in your 60s, and you have, I think we all can relate to that feeling of like spending your whole life struggling and to, I think, be able to say like, it's never too late. You can always treat this condition, treat your disease of obesity and be successful with it is powerful. And I hope that's what people take away from this.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think that's the reason for why you're doing everything is sharing so that other people will see that it's not impossible for them. So yes, I'm very grateful. Thank you for having me on. I hope something I shared has helped somebody, but it's been fun.
Yeah. So my mom is not on social media, but if you want to find the podcast, we are at Former Fat Friend Pod. I am at Maintaining Kasey. Mom, thank you so much for doing this. This has been really fun.
Really fun for me too.
And we will see you next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.